It took me the better part of 2 years to properly document the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy in New Jersey. It was a storm that affected enough countries, states, and people in general to fill an entire festival worth of films with their stories. But this film is about the places where I grew up. You see, for me, this was the first time that the disaster wasn't just something I watched on the news, but instead landed right in my backyard. Like any other story, it has ups and it has downs. And in many regards, it's not even over yet. But I'd like to tell you about the journey so far. And if for no other reason, but to honor the incredible people I met along the way. The date was November 3rd, 2012, just a few days after Hurricane Sandy had made landfall.
We're all on generators because we have no power. So this is children, babies. We have people in here. This is all kids. This is come. We had trucks from Virginia, trucks from everywhere. We have coats, kids.
In the days, weeks, years that followed the storm, the response was tremendous. Just as quickly, it seemed, as Sandy had destroyed our coast, people from everywhere sprang into action to put it back together.
Basically, we started this a few days ago because we really wanted to do something to get things into people's hands as soon as possible because we know they needed it. And we put out information online, and in a half hour, stuff was in here.
Over here we have MREs, which are individual meals. We've been sending them into the field, but quite honestly, we're trying to provide hot meals as much as possible. My phone's been ringing like crazy. Sorry.
The need was great, but the response was greater. Everyone seemed to be doing something. Even this guy who decided to raise money by running across the entire state. That's 220 miles, in case you're curious.
Oh, man.
It's just incredible to see everybody, come together, and it's heartwarming to see things like this.
It's like really family. Everybody's like, we just come in and just stars like we've known each other, so it's really good. It's becoming excellent. It feels good. It feels good.
I'm giving you everything.
It was an overwhelming time, but a constant reminder of the goodness of people.
I tell everybody my real job is at the Waldorf.
Everybody's spirits were high, and there seemed to be help everywhere. But with so many of the hardest hit areas closed off to the public, most people had no idea just how bad the damage actually was. Several of the neighborhoods I pulled down were completely destroyed, and so many people were literally just left with the clothes on their backs.
If anybody sees this, please help the people in Union Beach. No one knows the devastation that's here. You hear the bigger places in town. There's not a person in this town who hasn't lost their whole livelihood. Please come and help.
These people are in for a long haul. The ones that were affected, they can't just go right back into their house. They still have to wait for insurance to come in. They have to wait for the adjusters to come in and get checkout. And if the house is even livable, they have to make alternate arrangements.
I still see people talking about Hurricane Katrina, and till this day, we still see people doing fundraisers for 9/11. So, we hope that this is something that doesn't fade and people continue to support and rebuild these Jersey Shore areas.
This obstacle course you see here is what was left of Paula's home. The storm had ripped through and knocked the house right off the foundation. leaving any chance of repair completely impossible.
Just trying to take some shelving down that we had, that we maybe. And the funny thing is, I tell everybody, look at how everything flipped over, but I had a pot of sauce that I cooked the night before that, and my pot of sauce, I thought for sure that was going to be all over, and it's still standing.
Paula and her family are from a small town called Union Beach, one of the hardest hit by Hurricane Sandy. It's small at just under 2 square miles and is home to 6,000 year-round residents.
This tree, actually, I believe this is the one who tried to put my wife under the water. Pamela was stuck on that tree and couldn't get off, and that was the tree.
For fellow Union Beach residents, Bob and Pamela, there was nothing left at all except for a pile of debris.
This is what was my garage. My house was here, my garage was right here, so we're standing, I would be in my garage right now.
We thought we were going to get our normal storm that we always get. We were basing it on the northeastern we had back in '92, so we thought we would be okay. We would have some damage, but not what we woke up to the next morning.
Sandy first took form on October 19th, 2012, as a tropical wave in the Caribbean. It quickly escalated to a tropical depression, and then a storm, before finally being upgraded to a hurricane less than a week later. It swept across Jamaica, Cuba, and the Bahamas before starting its final collision course. And on October 29th, just 10 days after its initial formation, the winds of Sandy reached the northeastern coast of the United States. And the lives of so many of our residents were changed forever.
I woke up at 7:30 and there were sirens just going off and cops driving around with big megaphones saying that the storm was approaching quicker and that they were going to close the bridge at noon. I remember thinking it must be 3 o'clock in the morning because it's just pitch black. You can't see anything. And it was so windy and it looked like a hurricane was already here.
The howling wind from like 8 o'clock in the morning, and it never let up, and the telephone poles were snapping from the houses hitting them.
The water was literally like tidal waves flying down the block, engulfing the cars, and I said, just leave it. There's nothing we can do. Just get in the house, get safe.
When the surge came, that door blew out. And then I guess he said that we had a door here, so then it blew this door out.
Everybody seemed to have a story to share about that night. What they saw, what they lost, or just how they survived.
It was scary. My body was shaking. I found my body was shaking so much. It wasn't from being cold. It was literally from fright, and I thought I was going to die of fright. Literally die of fear, and then my fear was, what happens if the water comes up to the 3rd floor? Who's going to save my animals if I die, you know?
You saw the lights of the police going around, and you were just like, oh, okay, it's just a normal storm. Everyone that should have gotten out up at the beachfront didn't get out. They didn't heed the mandatory evacuation. And but then you realized that the sirens and the whistles and the lights weren't up at the beachfront. They were next door to you.
Back in the storm, we were worried. I thought I was going bye-bye on that truck. I didn't think I was going to make it.
We thought we were going to die, and a half hour later we ended up in the hospital with hypothermia. So, it was a bad night. We had over 60 rescues, just my little crew and I. So, Highway 36 was a river. It was about 4 feet, and we were trudging through the water trying to find people. It was just atrocious. Never thought anything would happen like that before. So.
And then by about 1 o'clock in the morning, the water had gone down.
And the wind just turned off like that. And I told my daughter, wait a minute, wait a minute. And I was upstairs and I looked down my stairwell and the water just evacuated out of the house, just like if you had flushed the toilet in a house. It just ripped right out of the house. Everything got sucked out. I got my searchlight and I was standing on my porch there looking around. And I was like, whoa. You couldn't take it in. I was looking at all these homes, and this whole street was just filled with houses, the lifeguard stand, all the telephone poles were laying in here, all the wires were in the street.
Storm surges ripped through town after town, leaving catastrophic damage everywhere. Several residents even needed to be rescued from their homes.
We had back here behind our building on Pool Ave, we found a family with an infant. We loaded them on our truck. We were running our Pierce out of our company, and we had the command vehicle, which is an Expedition. And I pretty much told our driver, just keep your foot on the pedal, do not take it off, because once you take it off, we're gonna suck in water and the truck will die. And we drove through 4 foot of water to get the family out.
Not knowing just how bad Sandy was going to be, many of these residents risked their lives by sticking around the night before.
The biggest thing I think that I'm personally struggling with is the decision to stay, and that, you know, let us be in harm's way like that. That was really a bad decision. But once I get over that, we'll be okay. But we're here, you know, we're here, and it's okay. You know, my kids are all grown, and they've come down and they've dug through this massive pile and tried to find some little trinkets of memento, memories that they had. They put some stuff on the roof. They all have crazy sense of humors, my kids.
You need that. You know, our daughter posted the one day on her Facebook that it was 42 degrees outside. Guess we needed those walls at the house, you know, and it's something you need to have at this time is a good sense of humor.
I wanted to clean my back porch off for 25 years. It's clean now. You know, I like to say our house got baptized, and I'm waiting for its resurrection.
My 3-year-old granddaughter, she said to me yesterday, well, she keeps telling me she has to go get new toys. And I told her the car is no good anymore. She said, well, you have to walk to the toy store. But she tells me that myself and her dad are going to build a new house. And we need to get hammers, and she needs a little hammer so she can help build the house. So that's where we're at. Our 3-year-old granddaughter is going to build a house for us. So.
And this is what you work 2 jobs for 7 days a week. My husband and I just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary, and it's like starting from day one again. We have nothing. After 25 years, we finally had everything. We really built a nice life for ourselves, and it's gone.
You know, sometimes me and my wife are sleeping in the middle of the night, and I wake up and I'm like, I thought it was a dream. I dreamt we were in our new house. You know, sometimes for a second, you can get away from all this, and you can find happiness thinking that you're in your new house and your marble tiled bathroom, and you know,
it's like a picture book, and you're like, and I know it's there, and still when I see it, it's like, whoa, like this is bad. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, you know, people drive by through here and they look down the street and you can tell that something's happened, but until you actually walk the streets and see it, you're like, wow, this is crazy.
My father was raised here. My sister and I were raised here as kids, just running to the beach.
At roughly $35 to $40 billion a year, tourism accounts for one of the largest drivers of the New Jersey economy. It's even estimated that the industry directly accounts for over 300,000 jobs. And with so many of our attractions on or near the water, the destruction was devastating. New fears quickly set in about the future of so many of New Jersey's vital businesses.
This is the first time we're actually in it, cleaning it, so we lost every equipment we had basically. It's going to be a lot to restore it, but hopefully everything's well by the summer this year. But it's hard, it's devastating to lose something you work so hard for and put so much time into.
Beach communities took a major brunt of Sandy's destruction. Boardwalks were destroyed, and businesses were flooded, both with water and sand. And of course, there was the now extra famous Starjet roller coaster, a permanent resident of the Atlantic Ocean.
The first day I saw it was Tuesday morning. I had heard rumors about it on Monday night, you know, texting and emailing back and forth to people that had power cell phones. But then when I first saw it at 7:30 in the morning on Tuesday morning, there was no words to say. I was speechless, and I know I stumbled over my thoughts for about 2, 3, 4 days, just because I couldn't grasp the concept of seeing the big roller coaster and the other 4 rides that have been disappeared into the Atlantic. And then when you see it in person, it hits you that, you know, pictures don't do it justice.
To call it all surreal would be quite an understatement. In towns like Seaside and Belmar, the boardwalks were gone. And in Seabright, it was the beach clubs. Every day I'd visit a new town only to find familiar places that had become completely unrecognizable. Between the residential areas and countless attractions, it was clear that we were at the beginning of a very long road ahead.
I'm glad that I haven't gotten numb to it. I'm really glad that I haven't, because I was worried about that.
Cassandra was the first full-time volunteer that I met, and her role in the recovery was immeasurable. She had been living in Florida at the time of the storm, and pretty much dropped everything to come back and help. She took over a condemned EMS building in Ortley Beach, and set up a distribution and volunteer center, later known as the Bucket Brigade. Ortley Beach is an unincorporated section of Toms River, located within the Barnegat Peninsula, one of roughly a dozen New Jersey barrier islands. It sits just north of Seaside Heights, and has been considered by many to be Sandy's ground zero, in terms of total destruction. It was really the perfect place for Cassandra to start her operation.
This is definitely long term. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here for a while. Nice wheelbarrow. Where did you get it? Right here.
The Bucket Brigade quickly became a staple of the Ortley Beach community. Local homeowners would come by every day for food, supplies, information, or even just some company and a chance to reset their batteries.
Estelle, she's a trooper, I'll tell you why. You gotta give this girl credit, she's a trooper.
Want some sponges?
I'll take those. You're good. I'll see you on the way out.
Sandwiches?
No, not yet. I'll touch on the way out.
Yeah, I got a generator, which is nice. We had football on Sunday, and we tried to do that again this Sunday. And then we had a Thai food truck last week, which was really good. pizza. I'm trying to make it, like I said, into like a community center as much as anything else, because I feel like people don't know what resources they have right now, if they have any, you know, if they feel like they have any at all. So I'm trying to coordinate that for people.
Sometimes we have 3-4 cars working at 3-4 different houses. Sometimes it's 2 cars. We'll pull out anything you want pulled out. We'll take out cabinets if you want cabinets coming out. We'll take down wet sheetrock if you want. We'll take the insulation out, and we'll do the floors.
For those with homes still standing and intact, hope rested on acting quickly, before mold had a chance to grow. Houses needed to be stripped and gutted, right down to the studs, and treated immediately.
The what?
It's nasty work. You got to remove all the sheetrock, get down to the wood, check out the wood, make sure the density of the wood is dry enough. If not, and there's mold on that, you have to remove that. And then you have to put like a liquid compound, hydrogen sulfur mixture, and you spray that over it. That kills the mold. You got to then let it dry, and then what you have to do is vacuum that all back up.
All this wood paneling over here is going to come out. Stuff for the windows goes.
It goes out?
Everything goes, yep.
Houses that had survived the surges of the water were now being torn apart by volunteers. And the entire contents of thousands of homes, including the walls, were filling curbs everywhere. There was garbage everywhere. Everything from large appliances to wedding albums and other sentimental objects.
The thing that killed me in the beginning was when we're gutting the house, seeing my daughter on her hands and knees in the mud, picking through the garbage to find her treasures. You know, that killed me. But that's gone.
It was about that time that I met Jeanette, a Union Beach resident that had taken up the task of recovering photos that had been lost to the storm.
The image came onto the back of the photo. So what we'll end up doing is scanning.
In just under a month, she had recovered over 20,000 photos, each of which needed to undergo an intense cleaning process.
Have to love them, because you can take them all. And it pretty much looks like the day it was taken. A little less color. So these are ones that have been dried. And now we can go in with like tweezers or fingertips and just pull the process off. And then this is usually what we start with, is something like this. So it's not perfect, but it's clean enough that we can scan it and retouchers can retouch the photos.
Jeanette, like so many from her town, was also a victim of the storm. Her parents' home was structurally damaged and needed to be demolished.
This room in here was Allie and Mikey's room. Let's see if it's... Look, it's so gross! That's funny. You think of all the stuff that would have gotten thrown out would be the vacuum.
But, personal struggles aside, she was on a mission. And as the town continued its cleanup process, she knew she had to act quickly to save as many photos as possible.
When I found my first photo, I was like, oh, it's only going to be one photo. It's only going to be 10 photos. Never in my wildest dreams did I think 20,000 photos. But in the same piece, if no one took responsibility, they would have landed up in the garbage. And the families in Union Beach were victimized once by Sandy. They had no choice. They had no control. At least now, if they have a photo and it's badly damaged, and you say, you know, it's badly damaged, it can't be restored, you can have the piece Sandy left behind. We can reprint your photo so that at least looks a little bit better, or you have the choice, you have the power to throw it out. And it's just about giving them just a little piece of power and something of their past life before Sandy took everything away.
Yeah, that's Matthew. That's Matthew.
That's one of the first photos I found.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first ones that you said that's like Bobby said was mine. And I kept losing it. Like, I know I have it, I know I have it, I know I have it. You're welcome. You have a good day. No problem. And no, you'll be back in town. You can have one of my shipping containers. Look, we're gonna have these big shipping container homes.
If you were here in the days after the storm, you'd understand why you want to stay in Union Beach. See, now I'm gonna start crying. Everybody was like amazing. The whole town was amazing.
I don't want to get into a lot of it. God bless you all. Let's have a wonderful walk. Everything is positive from this day on. Where you be strong, and we're beachers, and we can take anything.
The communities just stuck together, and it was an amazing thing to be a part of. Everywhere you looked, people were there for each other. There was an overwhelming sense of defiance and refusal to accept the supposed fate of their towns.
Merry Christmas. No, okay. I'll stand behind.
The goodwill continued right through that first holiday season. And in the seaside area, a new tradition began.
We're going to bring holiday cheer to everybody we can get. We've gotten tons of donations, so we're going to bring cheer to everybody we can possibly see today on the island.
The island, of course, referring to Seaside, Ortley Beach, and its surrounding towns. The bridge had been closed to all but some residents since the storm, making it a pretty quiet and lonely place. But in hopes of cheering everybody up, a group of volunteers led by a Seaside resident named Courtney got it to open for one day, and Christmas on the island was born.
Hi, how are you? You're a resident? Do you have kids?
Oh, thank you. Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you.
They're doing a great thing. They're making
a tragedy into a more, if you can say, pleasant situation. There's just too many good things to say, and I really don't know how else to express myself other than to say thank you, one and all. Thank you to everybody, and may God bless them all.
So we just keep going. For now, we make everyone have a very Merry Christmas, and then we start one hell of a good year.
The excavator entered sandy, pummeled towns as if it were the Grim Reaper. So many homes were damaged beyond repair and left partially standing and overrun with mold. Demolition went on throughout the 2 years following Sandy, and even continues today in some towns. Though it was undoubtedly a tough time for residents to watch years of memories being taken away, we all knew it was the necessary next step.
And this was our bedroom, and this was our master bath. We had a jacuzzi tub and a shower and a sink and all.
And our favorite part of the house was a little Kika window that's been broken, but it used to open and close it so you can peek into the kids to make sure that they were okay, or if they were fighting, go stop. And the cool thing about this is our cats learned how to open and close it, and you'd hear them like rattle it to get the lock undone, and then and jump through the door.
Most came back to share one last memory and take the chance to say goodbye.
Do it!
Yeah.
Let's go! Make it quick and painless.
A new year meant new hope and the possibility of better days ahead.
Right now, today is spring at the beach because we're rebuilding something, and I love that.
Today is one of the great first moments of the rebuilding of our state and most importantly, the rebuilding of the shore.
Belmar Boardwalk was one of the first major attractions to start rebuilding, followed closely by Seaside.
This is a new beginning for Seaside Heights. New beginning.
This assures our financial stability going forward. Now we can help the other people, our neighbors grow. Let them know that we can help you with your project. If we can do this, we can help you complete your project. Get the businesses open, get the residents back in town. We're just excited. We want to be a community again.
And not to be outdone, Union Beach had a ceremony of their own, and a symbol of hope was planted.
Hope Tree, first rule about Hope Trees, you don't talk about Hope Tree. No, I'm kidding. Hope Tree it's a spot. It's a spot where people can show their support for other people that really need it, and people that have really been beaten up a little bit can come and see that there's lots of people that care about them and support them and are looking out for them.
Volunteers continued to do their part and inspired many more to join them.
I've been following Cassandra on the Bucket Brigade forever, and wow, she's amazing. And I just knew that I had to do something with her.
$420 volunteers today.
These people, these volunteers that are coming in right now to help us out, this is a godsend to us.
I'm Carl Williamson with the Gateway Church of Christ. We're here in Union Beach, New Jersey today, handing out 30,000 frozen meals.
Little by little, signs of recovery started to show, and a powerful momentum began to grow. We were on our way. It was early wintertime, and things seemed to really be moving in the right direction. Up until that point, most of the houses I visited were being gutted or torn down. And though there was still plenty of that going on, it was nice to finally start hearing some sounds of rebuilding. Tons of people came out to help, which is great, but for this type of work, the key is organization. That's about when I met We Are Team Jersey, one of the groups helping to provide that organization.
Team Jersey is a godsend and the best people that ever showed up.
If it wasn't for this group of beautiful people, we would have had to have sold the property and lived somewhere else. We've been here since 1979. We don't want to leave. and these people made it possible for us to stay. So I'm indebted to them like you wouldn't believe.
It was a strong grassroots effort, and it was offering a tremendous amount of relief, especially by combining experienced carpenters with less experienced but highly spirited volunteers.
And each time you have extra, just go like this, and reuse it. So you kind of got it.
And it was led primarily by one very unique individual.
Who's having a vacation? Who looks bored?
We actually got Shannon's name from a resident in the area that said, hey, look, here's some groups that are out there that are willing to help you if you need any help.
Shannon ran projects in about a dozen towns and was in charge of hundreds of volunteers.
I'm right here. Maybe
She too is irreplaceable to the recovery.
What is this? You can weed whack next door over here in the front of this house, clean this up, and
I do
weed
not know
whack.
how to weed whack.
You're about to learn.
We are a group of people that have come together to help people who are in need. We get groups of people together to dry their house out, and then once it's dry, we're able to help them rebuild and just come together and be friends to these people.
Because I know you want to help.
There's so many houses, again, that don't have insurance, and they're living in that environment, even though it's dried out, until someone can come along and help them. So this, I think, Team Jersey, we are going to be like this and helping out people for a minimum of a year.
Do we have to have that in the documentary?
At about the same time that I was spending most of my days with volunteer groups, I occasionally found myself in meetings like this one. The residents of Seabright are about to be hit with some grim news about the future of theirs and many other coastal towns, not only in New Jersey but all over the country. Seabright starts at the southern tip of Sandy Hook and can also be considered as part of a barrier island. You'll notice that much like Ortley, it too is surrounded by water, prompting many to consider it a major risk for future flooding, even through lesser storms than Sandy.
The insurance costs are going up, but the higher you build, the lower are your premiums. If you build at their current elevation, I can almost assure you that that prices of flood insurance will be escalating over the course of the next several years. That's happened because Congress passed a Reform Act just about 6 months ago. It's called the Biggert Waters National Flood Insurance Reform Act.
This is a good place to stop for a second. Floods are one of the most common and destructive natural disasters in the United States. Because the total losses during a flood can be astronomical, it'd be virtually impossible for any private insurance company to carry flood policies. So on August 1st, 1968, Congress passed the National Flood Insurance Act, thus creating the National Flood Insurance Program. The program was reformed, amended, and reauthorized roughly once every decade until 2012, just before Sandy, when the Biggert Waters Act was signed into law.
Biggert Waters Act was a reauthorization of the National Flood Insurance Program, and basically, according to the National Flood Insurance Program, they're in the hole $22 billion. Our Congress said, we're not subsidizing anymore. You have to pay actuarial rates, meaning, we've been subsidized basically. And our flood insurance is going to go from, our personal flood insurance is now going to go from $1,000 to $10,000. And that's, it's a joke.
Starting in January of 2013, flood insurance rates were due to increase by 25% per year until the true risk was reflected. Homeowners not only faced the prospect of repairing their homes and replacing everything they had lost, but also the need to build to newer standards or face major rises in flood insurance premiums.
What they directed us to do is make the program actuarial sound. Actuarial sound means we have to pay for the losses on the premiums.
and FEMA's making everybody raise their houses a certain amount, which is incredibly expensive. I think my mom was talking about something like $40,000 to just lift the house higher.
If you don't own your house, you got to lift it. Because if you don't own it and you got a mortgage on it, and if you're in a flooded area, they're going to raise your flood insurance in 2 years. They say $1,000 a month, so some people are going to have to fork over $12,000 a year for flood insurance.
We don't know how high you have to go. The new regulations came out. The new insurance premiums came out that said if you're below this, if you're above that, what your insurance will be at the starting. And those are just suggested rates.
Those suggested rates looked like this. And now whether or not these exact numbers ever would have been fully implemented, they certainly did enough to scare everybody.
If I knocked on your door today and said, give me $150,000 to raise your home, or give me $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year for flood insurance for the rest of your life, that's not a law, that's extortion.
What ensued next was unanswered questions, confusion, and frustration, much of which still goes on today.
The point to take away is the regulatory maps, the actual flood insurance rate maps that are still going through the ongoing study process will not be out in probably until 2014, 2015 sometime. So these advisory maps are an interim product to help guide the recovery process and to help you make informed decisions.
There are no clear answers. And so that's what's very frustrating. No one really knows where or what to do next. No matter how hard or how many resources you pour on this, it's not a matter of the resources. It's a matter of planning, and planning takes time, and that takes patience. Unfortunately, there are many people who are not in a position where they have a place to stay that's adequate. So this is a huge problem for them. It's very devastating to many people. I mean, if you have a family and your home is not occupiable and you're trying to get back into this, and this is your primary home, it must be very difficult.
And to add to that difficulty, we were now right smack in the middle of a very cold winter. Businesses did their best to stay on pace to reopen before a very crucial upcoming tourism season. But to many homeowners, the cold weather just meant more reasons for delay. Several, with little to no other options, were forced to stay in their damaged homes.
So are you guys are you staying here right now?
Yeah, we're upstairs. It's warm up there, we got heaters.
Yeah.
So as long as you stay in the room, it's okay. Once you go try to go to the bathroom, you freeze on your way to the bathroom.
A lot of people with the cold right now, their pipes are freezing. They're still trying to live upstairs in houses that maybe they shouldn't live in, but there are a lot of families still in town living in very cold conditions here today.
Others managed to borrow, rent, or even just use some of their savings to buy trailers. The living arrangements weren't ideal, but residents made the best of it.
You know, the thing's 37 foot long. You don't have the luxury of walking around without bumping into somebody. But it's okay. It's home. You know, right now, my home is my wife, my daughter, and myself. That's home.
And some, like Bob and Pamela, were granted FEMA temporary housing in the recently reopened Fort Monmouth, an old Army base.
You know, we've become kind of a small community dependent upon each other and helping each other. We've all been through the same thing, so we try to help each other out as best we can.
That winter, I also took a ride down to Wildwood, having heard rumors of several displaced residents being sent down when the shelters closed. Wildwood sits at the southern tip of New Jersey, nearly 100 miles from the hardest hit towns, such as Seaside, where many of the displaced residents in Wildwood were from. With so many of the hotels from up north either occupied or still under construction, FEMA found vacancies down in Wildwood, an area not as harshly affected by Sandy.
I am right now in Wildwood. I have recently called back home, which is Seaside Heights, New Jersey, and we are still not able to go back as none of the houses are ready yet for us.
Hotels do not have their COs. No one can get back in that. So we're basically in limbo here.
Like I said, we were staying in the shelter for about a week. They were trying to find homes for everybody there. They didn't want, because they had to get school ready again. So they didn't want everybody to be homeless or have nowhere to go. So they were on the phone with the hotels and stuff down here that said, you know, they were nice enough to take everybody. And you figure there was 150, 200 people at, you know, Toms River East. So at that point, they said, you know, sign if you want to go to Wildwood, and your back's up against the wall. You had to get out of school by Wednesday, and this was like Monday and Tuesday. So you have no family, you have no friends to stay with. What are you going to do? So this was the only option, and I cried the whole time. I have a job, my friends, everything. My whole life is up there.
Though many of those displaced to Wildwood found themselves frustrated and scared, another very special volunteer took up a mission. Her name was Lisa.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to give you, because you have that many people, usually I give them like a 5-pound bag, but I'm just going to give you a big bag. They basically put these people on the buses. When they got to Wildwood, they had no idea where they were. They got off the Wildwood bus. They were just told to go to the motels. They didn't know where the motels were. They didn't even have cash in their pockets to pay for cabs to go to the motels. They had to ask the cabbies to let them go for a couple days until they got their first FEMA checks.
It was pretty much a common theme at that point. There was loss, and there was heartache, and there was frustration. But there always seemed to be someone right there to try to make it go away. Or at least make life a little easier for a while.
We call this shop for free, is what we call this. We let the people come, and we let them take what they need, and they shop for free. Everything from clothing to food, the furniture. You place your orders with the furniture, and then I try to fulfill them for you the best I can.
She's been helping us as much as she possibly can with food and clothing and everything else. We've had the Red Cross did help us out initially, and the hotels have been very nice to us also. It's just everybody wants to go home, and everybody just basically wants to know where they stand at this point.
It's a very trying time. Not to know where you're going from day to day is just, it's stressful, and I don't know how else to put it.
Most of the residents I met with did everything they could to keep a positive attitude and show their gratitude for all the help they did receive. But months of living in survival mode without many answers for the future was starting to bring many people to their breaking point.
What do you miss most about, you know, not even just your old home, but your old life, the way things were?
Having my kids. Waking up in the morning and seeing my youngest son's shoes by the door. I don't get to see him so much. The holidays, we used to have the holidays, we'd have breakfast. And we don't get to have those. Easter time, we'd have a Easter egg hunt in the backyard. And we don't get to do that.
That winter seemed to go on forever, and oftentimes the progress was slow. And the victims of Sandy, though frustrated and scared, had no choice but to continue moving forward.
The problem is there's so much need, and it's just overwhelming. There's, you know, thousands and thousands of homes that are close to being devastated, if not, you know, majorly affected.
We have no electricity, we have no water, we have no sewage. We don't have nothing here. We don't have no cable, we don't have no public lights. This place is deserted.
There's people moving out of town. They're not going to rebuild. They're just going to leave because they don't want to run the risk of something like this happen again.
My kids still feel this is their home. You know, they still feel this is home. They still have a connection to it. They still want it to be their home.
2, 3, slot. 1, 2, 3, slot. 1, 2, 3, slot.
As slow as that first winter seemed to
1, 2, 3,
move,
slot.
the spring arrived with many visible changes to our communities. Instead of my drives being dominated by the sights of destruction, signs of new life started to sprout. And some people even started to move back home.
We can get out of the trailer, which, I mean, it's a mobile home, it's nice, but it's just too small for 3 people to stay in. There's no parking. I can go in my driveway again. I don't have to worry about somebody taking my spot.
That's my kitchen, my hallway. If you noticed your before and after, I have walls now. I have a bathroom, hot water, toilet. Let me tell you, you learn to appreciate these little things.
Others, like Paula and her family, moved on to a new town. And though it must have been great to once again have a place to call home, it was clearly bittersweet as well.
And I really was grateful to have that little house, that little ranch on Pine Street in Union Beach.
Then, of course, there was that issue of house lifting. Though FEMA's flood maps were yet to be officially updated, and the fight over flood insurance rates was far from settled, houses everywhere started going up.
All right, Joe, see going up?
The process is expensive and complicated, and can even be risky to certain homes. But the fear of future floods and the possibility of large rate increases led many to feel that they had no other choice.
We had to go on pilings because we're in a V zone.
I just got to climb more steps, a lot more steps. So it's all good.
I think it's pretty neat. It's up there pretty high. I don't think I'll be cleaning the gutters here anymore. That's over.
Once the houses were up, cement trucks and mason workers moved in to build the new foundation before lowering the house back down into place. Several of the homeowners building from scratch, especially in the higher risk flood zones, were built up on wood pilings to prevent against damage caused by velocity waves. On FEMA's flood maps, these areas are referred to as V-zones. Whether it's pilings or a brand new block of foundation, expect to see plenty more of this when you're driving around the Jersey Shore. In the midst of my house lifting education, I also took some time to check in with some of the volunteers I had introduced you to earlier. Cassandra had moved the Bucket Brigade to an A&P parking lot just across town. Her small operation had now grown, as did the amount of people that depended on her.
It's not the best. We call it our little trailer park, but it's been really cool to see, you know, the traffic in and out and seeing a little bit of everybody coming in here because we are in a more visible location, so that's good. And we'll just evolve with the needs. We're getting more and more tools in every day, more things like that, and we still have the phase 1 relief supplies like toiletries, canned food, and all that, because people are starting to realize, like, yeah, I can't spend money I don't have anymore. There's no shame in getting a free cart full of stuff.
Over in Union Beach, Jeanette was still making lots of progress on her photo project.
The project's going. Every time I come down here, it smacks me in the face with reality and realizing that it's going to be probably another 6-7 months before all the photos are scanned and ready to get back to their owners. We've got probably another 10,000 photos to go. We've already scanned over 10,000, and so we probably have a little over 10,000 more to go. Yeah.
It was also early that spring that a new and vital recovery resource was getting ready for a grand opening. The People's Pantry was a fully stocked and staffed distribution center located in Toms River, just a short drive from Seaside Heights. The goal of the pantry was simple: aid as many people as possible in the long-term recovery process.
Initially, for the first
week, we're only going to be having books and food available. But as we progress, then each child is going to get a toy, and Pat herself wants to deliver it to them. And we'll have clothing, we'll have blankets, we'll have sheets, we'll have almost anything they need for finally moving into a new place or their old place again.
You guys have worked really hard from the beginning of this tragedy to now. I want to thank you all. These people that are going to be walking through the door need this more than any of us can realize. These are my neighbors. This is my community, and I'll fight for them, and I'll do anything I can for them. And when somebody gets home, we celebrate, and when somebody cries, we cry with them. But we were hit hard, and we were hit harder than anyone imagined. And everyone's working every day to make things right for these people, and none of us are getting paid. And this is what we do now.
Pat partnered up with Courtney, who is continuing to embrace her role not only as a long-term volunteer, but a leader of her community.
Here's the tool room, so start going for what you need.
Okay.
And make sure it's all here.
Alrighty.
As the summer months approach, I don't know how realistic it will be to have hundreds of volunteers come in and park and the logistics of it all, which is why Pat is amazing here at the People's Pantry and has opened this up to us being here so we can stage out of here and we can start tending to inland a little bit and to the bigger scope of things.
Courtney's biggest job was to coordinate the volunteer efforts, led by AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps can best be described as a civil society program, funded largely by the U.S. government and corporate donors. Much like the Peace Corps, members commit a specified period of their life to service in exchange for light financial compensation, most commonly in the form of cost of living allowances, student loan deferment or credit, and funding for education expenses. And they get to use chainsaws. AmeriCorps members not only provided much-needed organization and leadership to job sites, but they brought with them specific training for each situation. And of course, a jolt of motivation whenever we needed it.
All right, if you feel all right, give me 3 claps. Give me 3 claps. If you're ready to be a leader today, give me 3 claps. Give me 3 claps. If you're ready to serve America, give me 3 claps. Give me 3 claps.
The People's Pantry really was an amazing place, both to those still suffering from the effects of the storm and to the various volunteer groups looking for a home base. As time went on, their facilities improved, and they grew into a much-needed one-stop shop, organized on a large scale and set to meet as many long-term post-Sandy needs as possible. And they even gave Shannon an office.
This is Frank. He is part of the New Jersey Resource Center for Hurricane Sandy, and his office is here next to mine. And hey, Frank, someone wants to say hi. Hi, Frank. Your brother said hello. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
And remind everybody, the camera puts on 30 pounds.
5 ways of swimming. Much better.
It was also around that time that I met Dominic, and I learned a few things about some of the other ways coastal communities can be protected, such as the creation and maintenance of dunes.
The dunes act as a physical barrier from the ocean to the property behind it. Not only will it keep the ocean back, but it keeps the sand from moving westward, which will ultimately reduce, you know, the utility, like the cost of the municipalities to remove sand, or here as it's a private beach, there's a cost. Sand on the roads, digging it out, sweeping it between people's properties, on their decks.
Dominic lives in a beach community called Midway, which is located within Seaside Park, just south of Seaside Heights and Ortley Beach. Though Seaside Park took on their share of flooding during the storm, they avoided the intense destruction of their neighbors to the north. The residents consider that the result of their dune system, a protective barrier standing 30 feet tall and 180 feet wide.
If you compare this property to the properties just to north here, maybe 3 miles, they didn't have a dune structure like this. It wasn't as high, it wasn't as wide. It was limited in its capacity to protect them.
They say that mitigation, building dunes, building seawalls, sea gates, all this stuff, for every dollar you spend, you save $9 in damage down the road. That's what we should be investing in, mitigation techniques, and not raise everybody's homes.
Ortley Beach, shown here and mentioned before, was completely devastated by high-velocity storm surges, something well guarded against down in Midway.
The ocean came right through the weakest spot, which was the dunes over here in Ortley Beach, portion of Toms River here. And their dunes were really wide, but it didn't matter because the adjacent property was limited in its capacity to be able to hold back the ocean. So regardless of how big your dunes are, it's a matter of your neighbor. If your neighbor has no good dunes or their dunes aren't proper, it's going to come through.
Up and down the beaches, Dominic organized volunteer efforts to maintain and improve the dune systems, a process that involved plenty more than just moving mountains of sand.
A dune it's got structure underneath, not just a pile of sand, okay? And you need some structure underneath. Otherwise, the sand, it's going to get pounded, it's going to wash away, and you're naked again.
These structures included the burying of fencing, old Christmas trees, and are topped off with seagrass.
Grass will actually, the roots will grow into the dune itself, and it'll kind of bind the sand together and kind of hold the dune together. All the native vegetation, the roots will go down and kind of like, it's like rebar and concrete. It adds an extra bit of stability.
And the result? A giant wall of protection. With summer just around the corner, the pressure was now on to finish some of the bigger projects, so that we could at least partially open by Memorial Day. The boardwalks were well underway, as were plenty of other popular spots. Piers, beach clubs, amusement centers, restaurants, all in a race against the clock to the start of their busy seasons. Some business owners even opted for temporary locations, like Gigi, the owner of Jacob Bob's Bay, a popular Union Beach restaurant.
It represents our community, so it's good. It's a good feeling.
We were moving along, and many of the workers I met couldn't help but show some pride. Some of them saw their work as more than just another job, but rather a vital role toward the future of our state.
I'm just a small part, but inside I feel like I'm playing a huge role, not just as an individual, but in part of restoring the shore. It's been coming here my whole life.
What you've got to understand is that these places I've been showing you, they mean a whole lot to people. Not only because of the key role they play in our economy, but as the places we spend our time and build our memories.
The Jersey Shore it's everybody's middle name in New Jersey. You know, we gotta be Jersey strong because we love our Jersey Shore.
And with that, the race toward our first post-Sandy Memorial Day entered its final stretch. Actually, there was one more thing. Though it may not seem like a big deal in the scheme of things, I've always thought that there's something special about icons. And the Starjet roller coaster sitting in the Atlantic Ocean was certainly that. Though it hadn't had a single passenger in the better part of a year, it remained a major tourist attraction, and there was even some debate about leaving it in the ocean. It looked amazing in front of a sunrise, and in the wintertime, it was even a pretty cool backdrop for the snow. But sooner or later, it had to go. It must have been the first time that it ever looked small, standing there next to that giant crane. Once again, we all watched as a community, as another one of the reminders of Superstorm Sandy was taken away. It took about a full day to take down. Well, to remove the bigger pieces anyway. And when I came back to Seaside a couple days later, it was gone. Just like that, summer was here. And despite the continued struggles of so many people, residents did their best to enjoy it. There was a lot to be proud of, and a sense of much to look forward to.
I was amazed to see, that the boardwalk did move that quickly, and it's amazing. It looks simply amazing, and yes, it's not the same one, but now we can start a new beginning, a new time, make new memories, and we could always talk about our old memories, but it's always good to have new memories. So everyone coming this year is going to be amazed at how great it looks, and I'm so happy that it's going to be open for the season.
The sights and sounds of our freshly opened attractions was a welcome arrival. And so many businesses wore the badges of recovery with pride. Even Union Beach, a town once questioning its own survival, was hanging in there, and even starting some new traditions of their own. For many people, though, summer just meant having nicer weather to accompany their non-existent homes. Significant parts of Ortley Beach still looked like this, and thousands of residents from every town were still no closer to home than they were the day after the storm.
There's this mixed message right now that restore the shore, but we're all fixed because we're open for business for summer 2013. And it's kind of a weird dichotomy. You have, on the one hand, like you said, you got the boardwalk one town away that is ready, looks better than ever just about. And then you have this town which doesn't even have half of its beach open because there's houses crumbling into the ocean, 10 feet from beach accesses.
Still, as was the nature of so many people I had met, they made the best of their situation and what was left of their property.
I come here every day, and even though there's no structure here, this is my home. I feel that salt air, and I'm home. That's basically how we act down here. That's how we get some energy from the salt air and the sea breezes, and that's why this land is valuable to us.
In Union Beach, Bob and Pamela used their empty lot to host volunteer groups and to share their story.
First of all, welcome to our home. This is it for now. Next year you guys come back, we'll have a house or something for you to hang out in. We've applied for all the grants. We've asked for all the help we can ask for. It's not something that I'm used to doing, but we're asking for help, and hopefully somebody decides that they want to help us. And 'cause that's the only way we're going to get done, is if we get help from somewhere.
Though they had seemingly lost everything, and were still a long way from having even a fraction of it back, their spirits remained high. After all, it was summer, and this is not exactly a state that takes adversity lying down.
Hurricane Sandy will kick your ass!
I think everybody was just doing their best. We all knew things weren't back to normal, and it would probably be a really long time until we could say that they were. But it was important to remember to have a little fun along the way.
It's so important to have these kind of days because we're not going anywhere. The Jersey Shore is still going to be here, still is here, and it's not going anywhere. So to rebuild those new memories, I think is so important when the holidays or summer or just any kind of, chance there is to enjoy all that we are, all that the Jersey Shore is. It's so important to have that for the people.
Runner, set, go!
Are staring down at me, and I am stumbling. I call you on the phone to tell you that I love you, but I'm mumbling. The clock inside my head comes ticking to a halt as I go tumbling to another country where the warm and fuzzy sea is always rumbling. And I float along in the sea. It spins around under me. I float along in the sea.
In New York, there's 168,000 homes that are in the flood zone. In New Jersey, there's 235,000 homes that are in the flood zone. It's about 750,000 people in New Jersey that have no idea that they're probably not going to be able to afford the exorbitant rise in flood insurance premiums. We're worried about rebuilding our homes. We're not going to be able to keep them if we can rebuild our homes.
Nearly a year had passed, and the roller coaster ride known as post-Superstorm Sandy life continued through to the end of summer. There was just enough visible change for the outside world to believe that the storm really was behind us. And to be honest, for many people that was true. Overall, we had made incredible progress.
Welcome to our home.
It seemed that every week somebody new was moving home or at least breaking ground on a new house.
Hard to believe how fast this is going.
But for every property like this, there also seemed to be one looking more like this. An owner still searching for a solution. Like Jeanette, whose photo project was forced to be put on hold indefinitely.
I've had to take a back seat a little bit from that, mainly because I've had to deal with the insurance companies and the state grant process.
There were a lot of mixed feelings about just how fixed New Jersey was, despite the cheeriness of the months prior. And with the colder weather months once again on the horizon, anxieties were particularly high. Unanswered questions, seemingly bad policies, and slow progress in general were creating quite a backlash.
We're going to make this a national issue and we're going to bring it to Congress.
Up to that point, those that had rebuilt or lifted their home or both were able to do so with some variation of means, such as savings, insurance payouts, loans.
Yeah, I have a loan. It's a low interest loan. I have a $40,000 loan now attached to me.
And almost everybody got at least some sort of help from volunteers, whether they be family, friends, or complete strangers.
I said to him, I know you're a painter. This is going to help rebuild a house. It's amazing what we do with $200, right guys? Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you.
But in a disaster of this scope, there does come a time when you realize that goodwill can only fill so many gaps and take you so far before much broader relief is hopefully available.
The need is getting greater, and reason being is that anyone who's taken a loan out or an equity loan or they've gotten to the end of their savings, now they need our help more than ever.
Ultimately what we need is we need money. We need money so that we can get people back into town, we can get people back into their homes. So many are missing the gap funding in between. You know, if they have, say their house is going to cost them, let's just say around number $200,000 to rebuild their home, and they've gotten from insurance say $160,000, $150,000. So there's a missing factor of $50,000. They need that gap money.
That gap money was expected to come in the form of grants. It had been nearly a year since Congress had approved federal aid to the relief effort. But for many, the process was just not moving fast enough, such as in the case of the REM grant, a program that many felt was just giving false hope.
We have been denied the RREM grant because the state of New Jersey and the federal government couldn't decide how our name was spelt. So they denied us because they said we didn't have a FEMA number.
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal last week. $0 have been distributed from the RREM program. $0. Has anybody here received $1 from the RREM program?
No. If it's not going to be done, cut it. Cut the ties and let everybody figure out what they have to do. Instead of filling them, like, you know, you think, because you hear all these things. Okay, so in the back of, I know myself, in the back of my brain, I kept thinking, okay, so I have insurance, so that's going to come. Then you hear, you know, all the concerts and all the money that's raised to help Sandy victims, Sandy disaster relief. So you're thinking, okay, so there's going to be money, somebody's going to help us. Then there's all this money that's allocated through the federal government, so we figure we're going to be able to do that as well. And now here we are, a year later. Denial, you're on wait list for the grant process, you are in denial again, and then you're waiting again. Everybody's just waiting, and then you start to have to, now you have to think, well, this is not going to come, so you have to, instead of them cutting the ties, you have to figure out, you have to survive. So what do you do to survive? You have to figure that out.
Today, a few years now removed from the storm, you'll get varied opinions on whether or not these grant programs were a success. But regardless, they did move slow. And I think at least part of it had to do with questions regarding whether or not homeowners could afford their homes in the years to come. Having the means to rebuild was really only part of the battle.
This isn't a 3 or 5% increase. You know, you get into a car accident, your car insurance goes up 5-10%. You can't bitch about that. But when our flood insurance goes from $1,000 to, at one point they wanted to make it $30,000 a year, and now they're reducing it to $10,000 a year, and they think it's okay. No, it's still a problem. You cannot do that. That is not acceptable. And, you know, at some point, if you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for everything. And I think it's a big, big problem. And I do feel a responsibility that we can't let this happen.
Months earlier, George had turned his own frustrations into activism and started the group Stop FEMA Now. The group started as a means of demanding faster information from government resources, but quickly became a forum for fighting back against what residents believed to be unfair and destructive policies. It didn't take long for Washington to hear their message.
This is not for rich people. We got lots of middle class and even poorer people living on the shore in Staten Island and Brooklyn and Queens and Long Island. They can't afford $9,000. And they're going to have to either leave their homes, and this is many people who were ravaged by Sandy. They're just beginning to rebuild their homes, and then they get their flood insurance go way up, and they don't have any money.
Because these consequences are for real people. It's not just about property. It's not the property I'm worried about. It's the people, the families, the people who call this their home. The people are not going to be able to afford it as a result of this. The people who have put a lifetime of work and sacrifice to own the single piece of property that is their single economic asset that they have, overwhelmingly for most American families. We're going to take that rug right underneath it. This is the triple whammy.
Right from the start, I had been told that this was something that would affect the entire country. And as FEMA worked to finalize their maps and their rates, it was clear that a lot of people had grown fearful of their own future.
One Massachusetts resident wrote to me and said, I'm 70 years old, I live on a fixed income, and I'm unable to pay the proposed flood insurance. That constituent and many others have said they don't know what to do.
This reaction you see from the Senate had much to do with rallies that were held, both in New Jersey and around the country. People came out hoping to have their questions answered or to help raise awareness, or even just to present their own solutions to the problem.
The cost to elevate all the homes that have to be elevated under this new compliance system is far greater than the amount of money the Army Corps of Engineers would have to spend to build up the dunes. Much more.
If the maps were 80% wrong, we can only assume the actuary side of the flood insurance premiums is also 80% wrong.
Oh yeah.
Okay? What are we going to do about it? Are we going to have a big session? No, we're not. We're going to do something about it. We got Maxine Waters on board. She wrote the Bigger Waters Act. We appreciate her saying, hey, I wrote this, I tried to do some things, and it got out of control. We appreciate that. Now come fix it, but you got to fix it now. I don't want to hear in 3 years.
This is my favorite brochure from FEMA. It's called FEMA in a Pocket. And when you open it up, it just gives you some lovely bullet points of what to look for when you go to their website, filled with thousands of pages.
There were a lot of shared stories, and plenty of seemingly reasonable requests and practical solutions for protecting both homes and their owners. But I think above all, people were just searching for the comfort of a community around them going through a similar struggle, and just hoping to know where they stood.
The night of the storm, the night before the storm, we evacuated my mother and father, who we helped take care of, who live with us. 2 days after the storm, my father ended up in the hospital. Several months later, in February, he passed away. And all he wanted to know was, when can I go home? I couldn't give him that answer.
It was a dark time for many people. And that sense of optimism that had dominated the past year had all but gone away completely. Even the boardwalk of Seaside, one of the few symbols of our resilience to Sandy, had been hit with its second major disaster in less than a year. Some of the electrical wiring had been damaged by the saltwater during the storm and ignited the boards. Once the wind took hold of the flames, there was very little firefighters could do to stop the damage. And by the next morning, over a dozen businesses had been destroyed.
It hasn't really sunk in yet, but the more and more you think about it, the more and more you realize you don't have any more options. I don't have a business to go to. I don't have any more employees. I don't have to order anything. It's pretty much over, business-wise.
I remember at the time wondering how I was going to make sense of all this and put it together. And obviously I don't just mean the fire. We were a long way from the beginning, but it still felt like we were barely out of the gate. But that's when I noticed something. In the middle of all that chaos, and with the fire even still burning in a few spots, I saw one guy pick up a broom and start to sweep. I don't know if it was his business, or maybe he even just worked for the town, but it seemed like a very symbolic first step. At least to me, anyway. The bottom line is, there's always going to be something to knock us down. And for some, it's at times going to be far worse than it is for others. But as long as we keep moving forward, even if it's just doing a little bit at a time, eventually everything will be okay again. About a month later, I celebrated the passing of the first year with some of my new friends. It had been an interesting time, to say the least. It was a day full of service and speeches, and of course a little reminiscing. And at night, there was a gathering of hope, and a brave first step into year 2. I kept my cameras rolling much of that second year, following up with people I had met and stories I was following. And the best way I can report on it is to tell you that the rebuilding just continued on. And by now you understand that I'm not just referring to things or places, but to people's lives.
I'm going to sit here with my wife and my kids and try to do something to give back to these guys somehow.
You just have to be strong and keep going forward.
She says be strong as I'm sitting here with tears in my eyes. So that's awesome.
So, eventually it all works out and things get back to where they should be. Sometimes it takes a little while, but eventually you'll get there.
Over the past 2 years, I had met neighbors and friends I never knew I had. I was with them during some awful times, and I was with them during some great times. I was there when some of their neighborhoods were getting torn apart, and I was lucky enough to see a few of them starting to get put back together. And what it all taught me was to have a little hope. Smile and keep moving forward. Because sometimes better days are just another birthday away. And the clouds of doubt will always inevitably be moved by the light of the sun. And every time something bad happens, there will always be people there that want to help make it better. Or someone to fight for you when things aren't fair. Or someone just to give you a hug and remind you of the goodness this world has to offer. And to remember that we're all in this together.
proud of yourselves, because this is going to be something that 20 years from now, 50 years from now, we're going to look back and say, how did we ever get the East Coast stabilized? And it's going to be because of you guys and because of people like you. You guys are the reason that we're going to be able to get through things like this time and time again. So really, it's a big, huge thank you to you guys. Thank you.